You cannot have your frontline seat to the biggest revolution in human output since the Industrial Revolution, right? Like intermediated. You have to do it yourself.
Hi, I'm Brett Gibson, and welcome to High Bid. Today I'm talking with Amir, founder of PokerSkill. He's a repeat founder, including founding MarketZero, which is acquired by Zynga, and Cratejoy. And I really wanted to talk to him because of all the founders in our network, he seems to be furthest out there in terms of AI adoption and his coding workflow. So I wanted to hear from him about what's working currently, what's not, and why from the outside it feels like he might have superpowers. Amir, thanks a lot for joining. Really excited to dig into this stuff today. I know you're doing a lot of amazing stuff in and around AI and probably are at the far end of the adoption curve of the people I know. And I know a lot of pretty intense people, so that says something. So maybe can you start off just introducing yourself and what you're working on and maybe a little bit about your background?
Thanks for having me here, Brett. Happy to be here. It's funny, actually, like to get me to do a podcast when I don't need money at all, right? Like the only way to do it would be to ask me to talk about AI because I'm so passionate about it. I'm like, all right, I'll talk about AI. So I actually started programming as a kid in college since 2003 or something like that. Started playing internet poker with a bunch of my friends. I was a programmer. One of my buddies bet me that I couldn't build a bot that played poker for me. And the best way to get me to do something is to tell me I can't do it. And so over a summer, I wrote a poker bot on Party Poker. Eventually, like it got harder because they started putting captchas up and like you're started like managing multiple identities to like move money around. But maybe like $500,000 in like 4 months when I was like 20 with an AI. And it was a very simple expert system. And, I kind of became obsessed with AI from there. And I eventually built a company called MarketZero, which was also in poker. This time I was doing data analytics. So we measured basically we watched every poker game happening in real time. And we sold that data back to hedge funds, the poker sites themselves, to the players for competitive intelligence. And back then what I did on it was called machine learning. And so we would use really simple machine learning algorithms to do things like find out people who were colluding, people that were always the same people that are likely bots, things like that. And we would certify the sites and sell the data. Eventually, that was interesting because at the time, this is sort of pre-virtual machine. This is pre-Amazon RDS. So I was racking PowerEdge 1950s to build, a distributed MySQL cluster to handle multiple terabytes of real-time data in 2008 by myself, and so sold that company to Zynga, and I was there as a CTO at Zynga for 2 years, 1 year pre, 1 year post IPO. In like that time at Zynga actually has taught me a lot of lessons about AI, even though it had nothing to do with AI, by watching Zynga get disrupted, because Zynga was very focused on flash games back then, right? And they were getting disrupted obviously by native mobile, right? And it was a case study in Innovator's Dilemma, right? Like all of the geniuses in the room were talking about porting Flash to HTML5 automatically, and nobody was going like, this my kid hasn't looked up from his iPhone in like a week and a half. Should we talk about that? Like, so that was interesting. Did that for a couple of years. Learned that I am definitely unemployable, and afterwards started Cratejoy, which is. The simple idea started as all my friends are trying to start subscription e-commerce businesses, and it seems unnecessarily hard. Eventually, it turned into this to a curated marketplace for experiences. So, like, what I do for Mother's Day, how do I reconnect with my friends, that sort of stuff. So we sort of sell experiences in e-commerce, and believe it or not, I found applications of more machine learning than AI along the way there as well. But more recently, have replaced pretty much the whole company with AI at scale. And then during COVID, founded PokerSkill, which is how I met Brett. And we are building sort of Duolingo or chess.com for poker. And at the core of everything we do is AI, and our product is an AI. And I would say I've been an AI guy for a lot longer than it made sense to be. Like I exchanged emails with Jeffrey Hinton in like 2010. He doesn't remember me, I guarantee it. But like, I was Yeah, I have books on stacked autoencoders and stuff that like nobody cares about anymore, going way back, just because I loved it. And the big thing that's happened in the last 2 years is it all started to work, right? Like it it existed before and it was like a minor obsession and you could sometimes do cool party tricks, but now it works, right? And so that's why you say I'm at the far end of the adoption curve, because I'm like, in some sense, I've been waiting for this my whole life, and now it's finally here.
I guess what one interesting question though, in terms of someone who's been in and around AI before it got rebranded from machine learning, like that's to say that you have fluency on both sides of like, how neural nets are created and applied large language model usage. And do you like think of those as like in your head, is that all just AI, or are those like different skills?
Dude, I don't know. That's interesting sort of philosophical question. Like if you were to put like scientists from 200 years ago in the room, they're just like naturalists or whatever, right? Like I'm a technologist, right? Like, and I'm medium agnostic, and I work with whatever sort of like the best tool is for the job. And sort of these like divisions or these taxonomies, or maybe for people with more time on their hands. Like I reach for whatever the most effective tool at the time is. Although admittedly, I do get obsessed with ideas, and I did get from a very young age obsessed with the idea of like, what if the computer could think for me? Like as simple as like, what if the computer could think for me at poker, right? Some of the stuff I've done with machine learning before was like, hey, can we take all of our support tickets at Cratejoy, which is a big business, and can we pull out the product themes using some natural language processing, simple, right, and then clustering to sort of like identify hot spots, right? So I did find applications for this, but I've always thought of it as just technology, right?
Yeah.
And I find that the people who like really want the clean taxonomies are not the same people who are creating the most value. Because people who are creating the most value is like, I get call them whatever the hell you want. Like I'm going,
Right. Yeah, I don't care how you do it, just get it done. But all right, I do think that I do perceive a little bit of a through line, and I'm interested if you're like, no, this doesn't exist too, but in that like training ML models is like not deterministic relative to like traditional procedural programming. It's like a lot of lore and like, oh, this kind of works or that kind of works, and like people's tastes about how many parameters you should have it in there is like as much of a taste and pattern match thing. And I think that using LLMs is the same motion in a way that makes some people who are used to traditional pure computer science uncomfortable.
Perhaps, but all right, I have a few thoughts. I think programmers used to be thought of as wizards too, right? Like it's like I think like when there's just a paradigm shift and it's a new thing, the people that get into the mess and figure it out are viewed as magical, right? Like and there's always like an inherent huge amount of risk when it's new like that, because like you're placing maybe an undefined bet for an uncertain outcome, right? And like I think it sort of naturally feels that way, but the truth of it is to the practitioners, it's very predictable, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's like, no, look, when I have an open bounded problem that I don't understand where to start, I can start with deep research, and I'll use that as seed for Gemini or O1 Pro because they don't have real time access to data. If it's a social problem, I want to go to Grok because Grok is live tweets. Make sure to turn on thinking mode because you don't want the dumb Grok, right? Like it's very like. No, and it's like I use Cursor for this, and I use Aider for this, and I use Claude Code for this, sometimes depending on my mood, right? Like, and it's just it doesn't feel that way to the people who are actually doing the things.
Yeah, no, I totally identify with that. And I think it's like, I do have this map in my head of what to use when. It's like weird and kind of arbitrary, but it makes sense. And I think it's also rooted in the fact that people misperceive how much time you need to put into learning these things, because it feels like something you're just talking to. And so you like the actual results come from the same type of work that any skill acquisition comes from.
Dude, the actual real work to make real value is so boring. And it's not, this is one of the big traps, right? if you're not an AI fluent person, you bring an engineer and you say, go do this, solve this business problem for me with AI. 95% of the time, they're going to come back with like, oh, I got to fine tune. Well, I'm going to show you 3.1, show you 3.2. Like, do I want to do RL fine tuning? Like, they're going to be like, and you're like, what is going on? You know what that guy should do? That guy should sit down and he should start writing evals until he's blue in the face and they're boring and they're stupid, and he should evaluate them with the state of the art model, but have them synthesized down so they can be evaluated with the cheap and almost free and fast model. Then you should have the state of the art model, write more evals. And all that work is not at all what that guy's excited to do. But that's what actually solved like the business problem, you know? Mm-hmm. And like nobody wants to do any of that work. It's like this like unglamorous stuff, which also, by the way, goes back to this whole like making everything seem mysterious to outsiders. But the other thing, I'm curious about your perspective on this. I was just thinking about whenever there's these big technical, like hard technical revolutions where there's like a hard technical problem to solve. And then after that, there's like 20 years of value creation from implementation, right? So like if you think about like the personal computer, right? Hard technical problem, right? It took a long time to solve. It was very hard. There's a very few firms that actually come out as like CPU makers, right? Mm-hmm. And sort of like the mobile, right? Like very few people actually end up as the people solving like the core hard challenge. And almost all the value creation actually is all the adoption curve and bringing it into all the different businesses and letting it go through business cycles and change cost basis and change cost to cost reduction and change lifetime cost, change what consumers expect. Like all that stuff is not that like hard technical problem. But at the beginning, when that hard technical problem first jumps out, everybody indexes on that hard technical problem, right? See, that's why you have all this interest in these like foundational model makers. You have all these engineers that are like rigging up GPUs in their basement, like they're gonna train a model, right? But actually, there's very few people that are going to need to solve that level of problem, or even can solve that level of problem in an interesting, monetizable, defensible way, right? And like almost all the other value is like using the stuff they built and getting really, really, really good with them and feeding those learnings back into the next generation of those things. And I think that in AI, what we've seen is like this indexing on like the hard tech when actually like, you know, we've got the firms that are going to do that, right? And so it'll go to China, whatever, right? And everything else needs to be about like, well, how do we use all these things, right? I mean, does that resonate with you?
I mean, it does, right? Like it's always been the case that the slog of the last mile is like where the value is like actually driven, right? The weird X factor here that's like in the back of my head that I don't know where to place or even make sense of is like, what if the systems themselves become good at that slog? Like, what does that mean for the world? And they seem... and again, like part of the same thing of it being a probabilistic system and not procedural code that needs to have a branch for everything means that it like starts to feel tractable that like, you know, system design from these from LLM based software creation suddenly can have taste and finalize a product.
In the same way, AI feels like really sudden to everybody else, right? But like if you've been watching AI for your whole life, it's been like watching paint dry, you know, right? Like everybody else is like super duper sudden, right? But I remember sort of being over neural networks when Sam and OpenAI released the playground for training neural networks. I was like, man, I'm so sick of those neural networks. For if you've been in AI and doing this, like it doesn't feel sort of sudden at all. It feels like long and slow. But if you haven't, it's like everything just changed, right? And I think like there's a lot of that going on in sort of like the deployment of AI in business processes as well. So I have deployed AI in my businesses so natively it's hard to even reason about. Right. Like meaning like it's sort of nonsensical. It's like, well, what do you use computers for? Right. And it's just like, Jesus, I don't know how to answer that question. Right. Like it's like easier. It's like almost easier to just be like, you ask a specific thing that I would do and have me just word vomit how I would do it than it is to say what I use AI for. Cause it's like, I don't think 5 minutes goes by in the day in which I'm not speaking to an AI. And I'm like, pretty sure I'm not exaggerating. I'm like, pretty sure I'm not exaggerating.
All right.
You go to the gym, you know? And so the point I was going to make is this idea of, one day the machines are going to self-machine or whatever, right? Like sure. Absolutely. I think it's probably going to feel very sudden to people who are just sitting around waiting. And it's probably further away than they think. And then I think for those of us who are bringing that about, It's going to be like watching paint dry. And I'm watching every little incremental gain very closely and all the capabilities. Like function calling, for instance, went from like 30% to like a solved problem over like the last 16, 18 months, right? Still slow, right? And planning doesn't work, by the way, like on top of those things, right? Like, and so like I see all of the little incremental steps between like now and robot overlords, right? Like, or like self-conceiving, self whatever, like art, business process being a form of art, right? Like I see all those little steps and I'm just like, yeah, buddy, but like there's a long way to go. And all that is value to capture. And I actually am sort of on the side of the more capabilities you give for humanity, the more ways of consuming them that humanity comes up with always. Right. And so I actually don't think we're going to get there and then feel like scarcity. I think, I don't think we're going to get there. We're going to feel overabundance. I think we're going to get there and we're going to feel, those of us who like want to innovate are going to feel like a scarcity of time to like use all these things to do all the things. We just ratchet up to a new level of problem, right? Yeah. As you get more capabilities. So that's how I think about it.
I agree. I agree pretty much all of that. I think there is an extra thing right now where it's kind of like it does, even it's paint dry, it's moving faster than normal, and there might be local decisions around like, should I just wait? Like why, like I guess in like the top of that one being like, why make things work on a cheaper model if that, trend line keeps working?
Well, that's always been that way with, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's always been that way with computers though, Brett. Come on, dude. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It feels more aggressive to me, but let's that's a good segue. Let's talk about kind of the premise here. Let's talk about what you're actually doing. I think that maybe we'll put a finer point to it. So I guess I was started with, and I'm a little bit tempted to call back to the gym comment, but like, just what is your, like, I think people will be blown away by like what your setup is. Like, what is in front of you? I assume you're at your computer. Like, what does it look like for you day to day right now in terms of like using AI tooling?
I have 5 monitors. Every single one contains at least one AI, and I also have one up on my phone. Okay. So I was walking from my office to my house, in our monitors of the office, and I was talking to AI because that's what people do now, right? That's normal. And I was talking to iRecord, which is a live transcription of my voice, and I was rambling to myself about what I thought Brett would find interesting, right? And I realized that the process that I was doing right then you would find interesting. So here's how I prepared for this call. And anytime I name a tool, please don't over-index on it, because what I really mean when I name a tool is I use the best thing for like the last 30 days. And if you like ramp up thinking that's the best thing, I'm probably on to the next thing already, right? And so like, please don't think that anything I'm saying is like enduring at all, right? But so I rambled to myself 2 different 15-minute sessions. So I'm going to call in the middle. And I airdropped the iRecord transcriptions to my Mac. I opened up Gemini 2.5 Pro in AI Studio, not in gemini.google.com, because AI Studio is natively connected to Google Drive. And then I opened up my Google Drive and I just clicked on documents that I thought might be relevant somehow. Like there was like the pitch deck from when I raised for Poker Skill. There's like the vision deck for Cratejoy. There was like a random document that had like, I knew had like my bio in it, There was that PDF that I sent to you like a year ago when I was talking about like my thoughts on AI. I copy and pasted in the text from your email. I dropped in the audio transcripts from my rambling from my iRecord. And I basically said to Gemini 2.5 Pro through AI Studio, connected to Google Drive with all these things, I said, take Brett's questions and, from my unique perspective, right, something that his audience has likely not heard before, right, like give me sort of a couple bullet points for each one of his questions. I've used none of those notes, by the way, because we're just going, but like that's sort of representative of how I approach any problem now, right? It's like I think of it more as a synthesis problem then I think of it as like a genesis. Very few things are a genesis for me now. They're almost all synthesis, right? And I actually think that's kind of true in life. And I think, there's this philosophical question is like, does genesis exist, or like, is it all just like orthogonal synthesis, right? Like, I don't know. But certainly for me, it's all just synthesis, right? And so that's like, okay, cool. I just looked at this and I was like, I'm going to talk to Brett. I asked Deep Research. I'll send this to you. I went to chat.openai.com and I had Deep Research do a quick write-up on Initialized and Brett Gibson. So I threw that in there. So, and so that's like representative of, actually, that's a process I don't run that often because I mostly code now, right? Because at my businesses, it's, now I can show that something is possible and then give that to somebody else that I've trained to do these sorts of things and unlock massive leverage. And so it actually makes a ton of sense for me to build now. So I don't actually do a lot of this sort of prep anymore, but that's like how I think about a problem and how I approach every problem. And it's also like what I've trained people to do inside my businesses. People are the most important part of this thing more than ever, which is a weird thing to say during AI. So let me tell you my favorite recent hires at both my companies. An Argentinian named Leo, who is the man. He's like this awesome, curious kid. Former job was he was at a BMW call center, right? Natasha, who is I know her because I go wake surfing in Austin, Texas, and she was out on the lake one time. She's a part-time mom, and she used to run clubs in the EDM scene. She and Rebecca, who is Swedish, has been in the United States for 6 months, is a mom of 3 kids. When the kids are at school, she's had nothing to do. Before that, she did customer support at Spotify, and her husband's an engineer. And these are my 3 of my best AI prodigies, right? It's like, why them? Why not like machine learning people, right? Why not people with very fancy titles, right? And it's like, because they're curious and they have no ego. And by the way, the thing that I selected on for them, which is hilarious, is like, can they type as fast as I talk? Natasha got the job because she types 98 words per minute. and for me, that's like, okay, can you keep up, right? No ego. For them, like having a career in tech, big upside, being told to go try again with a new AI, they didn't expect to get the answer right? Like super curious, super curious, super humble, right? And so what I've found is that taking problems of my business, I get close to the problem. Like I go in there and I do the boring, annoying work that is not the cool stuff. Like when I got into AI, I thought I'd build cool things like neural networks. No. To solve real business problems, I'm like sending emails to influencers to get to see how they respond, to learn what it's like, right? Take all of that, and then I write evals and I do like the synthesis work to sort of like make a thing that half solves the job, that is enough now that like this is now a part-time job and this person go do something else, right? And the best people that I found are the ones that have nothing to prove. They've got no ego, and they're there to learn, have no preconceptions. And the people that I found that struggle the most are the ones that are very invested in some skill set that they've spent their whole life building, and they've like put their ego tied to. You know, and I've got some stories, dude. I went and talked to some YC companies for friends. They're like, you should come talk to my execs. And like, you leave the room and like those execs are not happy with the words that you said, right? Because like,
well, it's just, I mean, it does. Even in programming, right? Like the people least likely to get it are the ones most tracked in their way of doing things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I did want to give you another practical example, because this is the thing that people always want examples, and it's really hard for me to think of examples. It's because just like that's how I do everything. So here's one. At Cratejoy, we sell experiences, and so selling experiences, it's all about how you present them, how you can evoke an emotion. So we used to have a team of 7 merchandisers, and largely what they would do is they take a catalog of 20,000 SKUs, and they would say, okay, Mother's Day is coming up. What is the vibe going to be this year for Mother's Day? Go look at external data, right? What are our collections going to be for that vibe, right? So like we're going to have 5 collections on our homepage. We're going to have a shop. It's going to have 2 collections inside it. Then there's going to be some featured items. What's going to be our message? What are those collections going to be? Look at some data, talk a lot, pass things back and forth, then great. locked those. Somebody somewhere made a decision. Then there's 20,000 SKUs, right, to go through. Figure out which ones are a fit where are we light, where do you go look at all the product detail pages, the PDPs, what are the product descriptions, the images, the content, like everything, like has it been updated, is the shipping policy updated, right? Then a whole bunch of like manual back and forth with the suppliers, right? And this is like for a holiday like Mother's Day, which is like our biggest sales season outside of Christmas at Cratejoy, this is like 3 months of prep for a team of 7, right? Here's how it works today. Natasha, like, what is it, end of March? She started a week ago. Spent 45 minutes talking to, I think the AI she's using right now is she's using Claude 3.7 Sonnet thinking mode with a project where she stuffed a bunch of like old context, just like stuff we've done in the past, emails that worked. So 30 minutes talking to it and came back.
And
you
showed her how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, and when I mean showed her, I mean like she came to my house and we worked next to each other for like months, right? Okay. Like I don't mean like I told her to. I mean like we did it together, right? And that's what it takes right now because nobody has the answers, you know? Yeah. And so she comes back, she talks to it, she throws data sources in, and so she like works with the AI to like get something that seems good, and they're way better. Just you can look at them and they're way better than what my 7-person merchandising team used to do. Then she takes the output and it's fundamentally, it's a heading and a description of the collection, right? So, you know, the bonus mom connection collection, right? For stepmoms connecting with their stepchildren, right? And she takes the heading and it's got a description and sort of like, just like words. And she'll like drop 5 of those to me in Slack or email. I take that, I copy and paste it into a script that I wrote a year ago or more. That script pulls every SKU from our database and then takes each collection and then sort of in batches, it asks one of the models, whatever was cheapest and fastest at the time, on a scale of 1 to 5. No, actually not on a scale of 1 to 5. On a scale of very bad to very good, right? How good does this product match this collection, right? And then when it's done, it creates the collections in our e-commerce backend. And the first pass uses a cheap free model. It puts like too many products in each of the collections. And she looks at them and she says either like, looks good sometimes, or she says like, run it again. And when she says run it again, I run the same script, but I just give it a higher level model. So I go from 4.0 mini to like 4.0 or something like that. I'll go one level up. And rather than have it process the whole catalog, I'll only have it process what's already in the collection. So everything I just said to you, 45 minutes active time, an hour 15, you know, like for me and her, as opposed to a 7-person team. And so like, that's what like the real world solution looks like. And I think when you hear that sort of stuff, people are kind of waiting to see the like, do my job for me AI button. And that like button doesn't exist.
Like, how do you know what the right cleaving point is, right? Like you could continue to automate parts of what she did. Like you're like, all right, a person did it pretty fluently. We move pretty fast. The script works. Let's move on with our lives.
Dude, you know what's funny? You know Nathan Wenzel, right? Yeah, you know Nathan. He always did this thing that stuck with me. And he's like, if you want people to do a lot better, don't tell them to do, 10% better. Tell them to do 10 times better, right? Because if you tell them to do 10% better, they just think they'll work harder, right? And so I have to do that a lot now. And so an interesting example is we actually changed the cost model fundamentally in a way it's pretty brilliant at Cratejoy. High level is this. Everybody knows that the best dollars per engagement comes from nano and micro influencers. They have smaller, more engaged audiences, and frankly, influencers aren't established yet, so they care a lot more. The problem with them is like they're small, and you need a lot of them, right? And it takes a lot of manual labor to harness them, whatever you want to shepherd them, right, forward. And so the fixed cost of your capital means that actually it kind of doesn't work, right? So we automated that with AI. And so the question is like, well, how do you know when to stop? And I just have to ask questions like, okay, your goal is to add 10 new influencers, which is like the sort of goal that you would have if you were sending emails all day with influencers. Let's add 1,000, right? And that's how you start to like, first of all, what would happen if we added 1,000, right? Good or bad, right? And then, okay, let's put aside it's not possible and just embrace that it is, right? And say, if it was, what would it look like, right? And when you start doing that, what happens is like it becomes obvious where the opportunities lie, and sort of like that where do I stop automating question becomes like not a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. It's like all bottlenecks. And so if you're grounded on the actual priorities and going down the list of bottlenecks, when the bottleneck is unbottlenecked, you do something else.
Right. Well, and that's why also like it's, dude, I don't try to convince anybody. I don't even talk, like, I'll talk to you about AI because like you're fun to talk to about AI. But like, I got so sick of the like talking to AI for people who are like, well, what's it useful for? Right. And they're like looking to like sort of like disprove you. And what they're all sort of looking for, and I still think a lot of the popular discourse is this, which is they're looking for the bundled up, here you go. You push a button and it replaces your company, right? Like they're looking for like that, like, I don't know, the self-driving for like companies or something, right? And the truth is the people that are creating a lot of value, first of all, like we don't need your money right now because like we're using AI instead of people. And mostly what I need is more hours in a day and I need nobody to talk at me so I can concentrate, right? And like, and we're also not really that much on Twitter either, except to like, I'll go on there to complain if the Anthropic API is down or whatever. But like mostly we're there to just absorb new things other people are learning as fast as we can. And the solutions that we're putting out don't look like much unless you've had to merchandise a 20,000 SKU catalog for an e-commerce business before. Like, and then all of a sudden it looks like you have superpowers, and your superpowers are this like Python script that only one person knows how it works, but that replaced 7 people, right? And like the stack of those, right, took, we got a $200 million top line company being run by 5 people. That used to be 100, right? Like, and it's like the combination of all those things. And so it could all be packaged up, and somebody will, right? Somebody will package all of this up for resale. But at that point, like those of us who are in the weeds today will have harvested a lot of that value. And I will also say that it's compounding on itself, right? So like a lot of the artifacts I used to prepare for this discussion with you are previously AI synthesized artifacts, right? And so everything is starting to compound on itself in such a way that like you might not actually ever get there if you wait. Right? Like, because the people,
including like your own fluency and intuitions. Cause like, I didn't really get to it, but like there's this, I mentioned there's a question for people who are in it all day of like, how did he know which product to use when he got his audio done? How did he know which docs to start adding that were like appropriate, that would be additive to like what he wanted out of the system? How did he know like how to interpret that result and use it, or like, decide whether or not he was just reading the response it got, or if that was just going to inform the dialogue? Like there's like the number of like constituent decisions you're making to use these things as deeply as you are, it is compounding.
Absolutely. And I think the fundamental thing is that like I'm just like not afraid to try. And my advice when I ever talk to anybody, I have a friend, he's a restaurateur who is a YC founder, made a bunch of money, now he owns a bunch of restaurants, right? It's like in Texas, it used to be you sold the company, then you opened a winery. I guess he's a restaurant now. So he owns a bunch of restaurants, and he's like, I'm going to run, there's no reason that the judgment of a GM can't be done by an AI. It's a good idea, great idea, right? Nothing wrong with his idea. And then he says, well, I'm saying like, you're going to do the tech, right? He's like, well, no, I'm going to hire somebody to do the tech. I'm like, it's not going to work, right? It's not going to work because like this stuff is moving too fast, and there's too few people that actually understand it and are trying it on hard enough problems that they could know how to do something like that. And those people are overwhelmed with opportunity because all we see is opportunity, right? And like, why, like the chances that you're going to find one and convince one to serve under you as like not a founder, like is just like very, very low. The only answer is actually you cannot have your frontline seat to the biggest revolution in human output since the Industrial Revolution, right? Like intermediated. You have to do it yourself, right? And so like all the people who are like, I'm going to wait, or like, I'll get somebody to, do AI for me. I think that they're going to miss a lot of opportunity. I think they're going to be playing catch up later.
Yeah. Okay. Stepping back slightly, like speaking, so like maybe can you explain the relationship? Like Cratejoy was your not previous. You're still working on it, but you're full time at PokerSkill today. Like how, like like can you like what is the backdrop for the organizational changes that you've affected there as you've had Cratejoy apply more AI?
Well, so Cratejoy I started in 2014, and we were at one point we were Danielle Mattermark. Do you remember Mattermark? They were the ones who were doing the analytics of startups for a while. We were the fastest growing internet company for like one quarter, when she was doing that back before she sold. And I would say sort of first newbie venture capital CEO mistake in that company was I split my attention. I tried to do two things at once. And the truth is, at a startup, you get lucky if you do one thing at once. And the irony of this is I'm now talking about doing two companies at once. Please don't point that out. I tried to do two things at once. Long story short of that business is we had one opportunity to exit, and that was during COVID. We missed that window. And since then, we have been sort of big players in a small and getting smaller market, which is sort of subscription boxes. And probably 2 years ago, there was a moment where it was like, okay, either like company dies, right? Or I like use it as a testing ground for all of my theories, what we can do with AI. And you know what I chose, right? I'm like, all right, well, there's nothing to lose, right? There's nothing to lose here, right? Like, and we fired everybody. I mean, everybody. There's the front down to 4 people. I mean, so at the point at which we did the layoffs, we were at 40, went down to 4, right? And
but you did that before or after you realized that you could do it via AI? Or you demonstrated that you could do it via?
No, there was nothing demonstrated. It was 100%.
So you started off like pureness. It wasn't like, oh, we just realized we need less headcount as we layer stuff on. It's like pure necessity. We need the budget. Budget is upside down. We're going to get rid of everybody, and then we are going to burn the boats to figure it out.
It was like, it was actually much simpler than that. I think even, yes, what you just said, but like, I've been in this business. I founded a company with one of my co-founders. We sold that company to Zynga. We've been doing this business since 2013. It was like, this is the only way we're still even interested is like, if we do this awesome thing, right? And so, yes, but it wasn't even like none of us needed it to work. But it was like, this would be awesome. Right. And so we did that, and we just let everything. One of the things I've learned repeatedly is you'll be surprised by what breaks if you just stop doing things, right? Like the things you think are the things that are really important aren't the things that are important for the most part. Like there's like a subset of the things that might surprise you which ones they are that actually really matter. And some of the things that you think like really, really, really matter, like even answering most of your customers, like actually kind of don't. Like, and I'm not advocating bad support. Please don't take that away. But like, what I'm saying is that like, people think they know what matters because of the activity that they personally do or others around them do. But actually uncovering what really matters is a different thing. And so we watched what broke. And the first thing that broke was support. And actually support's the easiest thing. If your support isn't solved with AI, you're just behind because this is a solved problem, right? And support was easy, but it wasn't easy 2 years ago. And so I started with support and personally built that up using AI. And then what we started doing is developing an internal playbook for not how to solve each problem, but how to learn how to solve each problem, right? And it's like somebody at the founder level, which there's only founder level people left, go deep into the weeds on the problem and manually do it and then automate their way out of it using AI. Like that's sort of the playbook. And then to the extent that it needs human supervision, that you backfill with a part-time mom, like seriously. And that is like astoundingly effective. Well, so that company was presumably going to die, wasn't working out. And during COVID, we started Poker Skill. And the original vision for Poker Skill was just like, hey, we all love to play poker. It's how we used to all socialize, my friends and I. We weren't seeing each other. So we built a version of poker on the internet with video. And as like the vision evolved and people sort of stopped wanting to, they started going back and hanging out with each other. It became clear to us that actually the bigger opportunity is to bring poker to a broader audience, right? Is to say, hey, look, all these women that have been watching poker on TV that are now getting interested in the game, have been for a long time. There's now a lot of like really strong female influencers that are like public poker players, and they're awesome, right? All these people that are crossing over from chess, they've been watching poker on TV now for 10, 15, 20 years, right? They are interested in the game. How do we make the game easier, more accessible, right? And it's like, well, you know who's done that? Chess.com did that, right? They made learning chess fun, right? They built a chess AI that taught you how to play, right? And so we said we think poker's ready for that. And so we've built a poker AI that teaches you how to play. And there's no gambling. It's not about that. It's about learning how to play with an opponent that shows you their cards afterwards and tells you what you could have done better. It makes it more accessible. In the same way Duolingo has made learning Spanish fun. You do it when you're on the treadmill. That's what we're doing now. AI is baked into both how we build the company as well as literally the core product is an AI. Mm-hmm.
Wait, and so you also reorged engineering there. Like, when you say you have 5 monitors, you have AIs running, like, what are you actually using? Like, what does it look like for you to program? And like, what does that look like in terms of managing an engineering team these days?
The only engineers I work with now are also coding using AI all day. So we sort of speak a like meta language, and we know like there's the sorts of problems that we discuss are much closer to product problems now. So like we think the difference between designer, engineer, and product manager is compressing, because by the time my designer is working, is looking at something, like he already actually has mocks because one of the engineers made mocks using Claude and maybe even prototyped the back end and maybe got a prototype of the front end working and maybe didn't actually code hardly anything at all to do any of that, right? Because it was pretty clear React and like Cursor 3.7 can just spit out React and like, there you go, you got a little swap prototype. So the level that we talk about things is like much less specialized. It's much less like your DevOps, your front end, your back end, your design. And it's much more like what's the right solution and like what's the right way to think about going about it and then just like go, right? So I think we sort of speak a different language now than we used to. And technology.
And you're having that dialogue with each other, but also with
AI, right?
AI,
By the time we're talking to each other, the thing that we're most likely to do is exchange AI notes. So like you'll see that happen a ton. Where it's like, here's my deep research on that. Like, oh, here I had O1 Pro do a thing. Here's what Gemini thought. And then you have these Google Drive docs, which have like tabs. They added tabs now, and like each tab will be just like different, AI notes, and then we'll be like resynthesizing those things and pulling them back out. And then by the time we get to the end, at some point, somebody's just down the execution path on it because like at some point you just seamlessly transformed into executing because it just made sense, right? And so it's just a very different way of working. And I would say one thing is like, we can't really hire very many people. And the reason we can't really hire very many people is because like if they can't work this way, they're just a big obstacle for us, right? And so for us, we need people who are really curious, right? Really, really get intense satisfaction by being challenged, right? Who like get tickled by like learning something new that invalidates their previous expertise, right? Like, and those are hard people to find, right? And also at first you feel really stupid. And like it's really hard to take somebody who's put their ego on expertise and like have them be like, I'm just going to feel stupid for 6 months, right? And so it's like I would say it's changed what engineering even is to us. It's changed the level of the conversation. It's changed the type of person that we'll work with. It's changed like our expectations, the size of our team. So it's really different. And I would say AI, and when I say AI, it's like we mean very specific things when we say AI, whereas I think other people use AI as like a catch-all. Like when I'm talking to my team, we actually don't say AI. I say Sonnet, Gemini, O1 Pro, deep research, right? Like we're saying specific things, right? And we mean specific things by them. And so we like our AIs, which are sometimes enhanced with context we provide as proprietary, increasingly through things like MCP that give it live access to our databases, right? Our AIs are at the table, like really at the table, like in like a way that's like hard to understand, like unless you are sort of in the room, but they're first-class contributors to what we're doing, and I mean, literally a thing you see a lot of is like a screen share is open and what's on the screen an AI window, and we're kind of looking at it, and then it'll flip to another tab, which is a different AI. We'll look at that. We'll copy and paste a thing and ask this one that, right? And so I think just like the way in which we work is like dramatically different. And then the execution piece is also done through AI, but it's a lot of personal preference, right? So like Justin on my team, he's a badass at poker skill. He used to build, he used to work on nuclear warheads. Like he's a stud, and he prefers NeoVim. So he has his own workflow that uses his AIs in NeoVim. I've got my own workflows that I have different specializations for. So I think that like expression is personal there, but kind of becomes an implementation detail. And the things that are considered implementation details now would have been like whole features and epics before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that also makes sense too, because it's like I'm also an Vim user, and so I end up using command line stuff more because I've not spent the time to like get my Vim script in order. There is one called Avanti that's like built in, but all right.
That's my trouble. That's my problem with Vim is like once you like fall behind on keeping your Vim stuff up to date, you're like, oh God, like it's I'm hopelessly behind.
I had to port it all to Lua. Actually, well, I had to have Claude port it all to Lua so I could use Avanti because it was all in actual Vim script. But
that's the big thing what you just said, by the way. So for instance, here's a crazy one. The best library for doing a perfect hash, which is needed for a detail of a poker AI, is written in C++. That would have been a blocker for us because like our code base is Golang. It's a day port now. It's a complex library, right? But you start by importing the tests, and then you just make the code pass the tests, right? Like, and that's crazy, dude. Because that's crazy. Like, you could take a complex library and translate it to another language, and it works in a day. Are you kidding me?
When do you decide to go try to use a new tool? You know, like they're coming at you so fast. You're changing monthly. Like that seems like an interesting part of the decision tree.
That's a like work question for somebody. Like you're asking a question somebody would ask about work when I think of it all as play, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're like, I noticed it and it looked useful, so I couldn't stop from going and trying it. Like, what are you talking
It's like
about?
asking my 10-year-old kid, like, how did you know to go use that Lego set? And you're like, what?
I just was trying to get, I mean, it's like all the way down, you're like, well, reorient all of your questions around getting things done, and then they will make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's all sorts of reasons, including I got distracted and started talking to Grok and just asked Grok what's going on. You know, like it's just you know, and I'm sort of I'm 41 and like I'm having more fun building and programming than I have my whole life, and like it's there's so much, dude. Every day I get a new superpower, and like literally, I was having a bad day someday last week, and then Gemini 2.5 dropped, and then I was magical. Like I gained 10 IQ points, and like it was just like, dude, that happened like last Tuesday, right? Like so. Yeah. My mental model for this stuff is just so different than like, how did you know how to go try that? That it's like, it's like kind of like hard to answer.
I mean, it does like, I mean, that doesn't sound like watching paint dry, if I'm keeping honest a little bit, but.
Well, no, what I'm saying, if you're outside looking in, it's going to look like paint dry, because my friends who aren't in AI, I'll give you a good example. This is one of my best friends, top attorney in the Army. He came over last year, I think it was New Year's. And we went on my balcony, I remember this, we're having a drink, and I was talking about how important AI was. And I was like, dude, what's one of your cases right now? Right now. Just ramble to me. And I had ChatGPT, and I don't remember which model this was. This was pre-01? Might have been pre-01. Write a brief. And he looked at it, he was like, that's right. That's really right, right? And he goes, holy shit, I'm going to use this for everything now. Never touched it again. Right. And it's like, I just showed that guy that all his paralegals, all his work, like I just showed him that he could talk to it and it was all replaced while he was having a drink on my balcony. And he never touched it again. Right. And so for him, who I love, if you're listening, it will seem sudden, right? Like it will seem like it came out of nowhere. Where for me, like it seems very, very slow, right? And yeah, like I know you're saying
Well,
like
yeah, I mean, but there is cognitive dissonance because you're also like, I gained 10 IQ points last week, but I actually think I understand how those like makes.
but also here's the thing, like that 3 weeks where nothing happened was torture. Are you kidding me? Like there's no new models. Like what is going on?
Cool. All right. I was going to ask you, I mean, we're a little bit out of time, but I was going to ask you like what your recommendation is, but I feel like I could guess for what other startups should be doing. And it's like, it's just like find people who are hungry to get shit done and tell them to go all in on any tool they can find that like gives them leverage.
Yeah, so a couple practical things we do. I do something that I do at all my companies. I have done with my friends' companies too. We do show and tell, A&I show and tell twice a week. And I like force it, right? And it's like literally like show us something you failed at using AI. Show us something that didn't work, right? Like show me something funny and how bad it was. Because the thing that people are afraid of is failure, right? And so like you make the goal to fail, and I lead because I have like lots of failures, like and then you sort of make it safe to experiment and have it not work with AI. And then from there, it creates a culture of sharing. And then the part of the context of the company is we're educating each other all the time, right? And then it goes from Amir screen sharing, showing how to do things, to Leo, to Dan, to Blake, screen sharing and showing other people how to do things. So it becomes a fabric of companies. We're constantly re-educating each other. And so I think that has to come from the founders, and it has to come genuinely, right? Like if it's like a part of the work, I think it's not like you have to like really be hungry and really be curious, and then you put that out there and you make it safe to fail, and you encourage others. And the people who are the people who have the potential will show themselves at that point, and the people who are mostly threatened by change will also show themselves.
I could probably ask you questions about this stuff all day. I guess one thing, what should we look forward to for PokerSkill?
Well, we're gonna launch our early access where you can play against our superhuman poker AI written by yours personally, and it teaches you how to play poker very soon. So we're looking forward to that.
Sweet, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Amir.
For sure.